My dad passed away. It was so hard to accept. I was freshly 19. There's nothing that you can do about those things, but you have to move forward. Man, I wasn't feeling like talking to anybody.
Alleviate your suffering, but it brings you closer to other people, hey? When you hit rock bottom, those that stay, those are the people you hold close to your heart.
Once I kind of started to give myself that time to lean into other people and to just shift my mindset, I did feel like I started to pull myself out of it quite a bit.
Experience loss? Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome back to the Long-Term Podcast. I'm your host, Advin Villa. Today, we have MacEwan student in his fourth year with a Bachelor of Commerce degree, majoring in accounting and minoring in business intelligence, Brian Gulbraa. We will discuss strategies for coping with loss and searching for support, success in university, and getting into healthier but realistic routines. Everyone, welcome.
Sweet, man. Thank you so much for coming on the Long-Term Podcast, bro.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man. Read your responses, bro, and it's just, you're a very resilient person. Kudos to you for still getting top of your class. So yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, obviously, a lot. We went to high school together. After that time, I kind of took some time off to find myself, struggled a little bit getting through some things, but after some time just ended up getting back into school, finding out it was something I was really passionate about and enjoyed and could succeed in. And I'm just going into my fourth year now, just about finishing out and figuring out what I want to do. My girlfriend and I are moving in together this week, so we're kind of in the midst of all of that right now. So it's a busy time, but yeah, that's about it.
Oh, wow. That's, man, can't believe people are already moving out, having kids. And we were just in high school, 5 years ago?
5? Yeah, 5.
Yeah, it's crazy.
No kidding.
Yeah, bro. So the strategies for coping with loss and searching for support. So can you share a personal experience where you faced a significant loss and how you managed to cope with it?
Yeah. So as you know, in November 2020, my dad passed away. It was a really sudden, like unexpected kind of thing. Like so sudden that you go to bed one night, everything's good, everything's normal, and you wake up and it's just kind of thrown at you. And as far as coping goes, I think for a long time I didn't really cope. It was so hard to accept. I was freshly 19. Just the other day we'd been having like an argument. It felt so real. It was just such a hard thing to accept. I don't think I coped for a long time. It took me a while to kind of get into a place where I could start moving forward from it. But in a situation like that, you hit a point where you kind of have to. I dwelled a long time on the things that I wish I could have changed, the things that I wish I would have said, or the things I wish I didn't say, or the plans that we had made that we never got around to doing. And staying in that mindset, it really just brings you down. It doesn't allow you to move forward at all. And it creates a memory of that person that you just don't want to be what you remember them by. So the biggest thing for starting coping, I think, was just realizing that there's nothing that you can do about those things, but you have to move forward anyways, and you can control how you remember them. Think about the good memories, the redeeming qualities, and focusing on that was a big part of starting to move forward.
It must have come as quite of a shock to you, hey? Just you're not prepared for something like that. And sure, maybe you've seen it in movies, you've heard about other people going through it, but then when it comes, it's just so visceral. And like, how do you even process that the first day? Like, do you just kind of, like, you had mentioned that at first you didn't really cope with it. Like you just try to ignore it. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think when you talk about like how you process it on the first day, I don't know if there's an exact answer to that. Just because I think on that first day, it's so hard to accept. It doesn't feel real. I don't know if it's easier, if it's something that you're like anticipating coming. I can't imagine it's easy to see someone that way. But when it comes up suddenly, you kind of just go through the motions at first. My first reaction was denial, like, that can't be true. There has to be a mistake or something like that. And then you do accept that it's true. And then you start reminiscing on it. And it's not something that you can just accept in a day, but it takes time. And as you go forward, I think each day you accept it as reality a little bit more, and you start figuring out how you got to move forward from that.
Yeah. I remember my dad as he's still one of the toughest people that I know in my life. Very hardworking, very just emotionally stable. But the times where when I did see him kind of be vulnerable was the time when a family member would pass away. And that was just, and it'd be a family member where they just fight all the time because you get to romanticize a lot of the good, or not romanticize, you get to look back on the good moments, and you get to witness just what you could have done. It all looks so clear after the death of a loved one, and it's just, yeah, it's one of those terrible things where we don't really know how to navigate it because it's different for every single person. Okay. And it's different. The relationship that you have is unique to your own. There's no this is how you cope with it. You got to follow this. No, it could take months. It could take years. And then still, what I've heard too from people that have lost a loved one is it never gets easy. You just get stronger. Is that true?
I think that's exactly right. And it's funny because you hear all of those things and you understand them, but you don't understand them until you actually experience it. And you also made a good point about your relationship to that person is unique. So it's hard to know how you're going to respond to it until it actually happens. And I think that's something that can also make it hard to cope with because you think that no one understands what you're going through. And to an extent, that's true. But thinking about it that way makes it so easy to push people away, to not want to open up because they're not going to want to understand. And realistically, that doesn't help you move forward from it. I think once I started understanding that I can let people in about it and I can talk about it a little more, talk about why I'm angry, talk about why I'm not doing okay, it really does start to help you move forward a little bit.
I find bottling up emotion just makes it worse. Like if nobody knows what's going on and you just like lash out at people, people just think you're an asshole. But then when you actually tell them, hey, let them in and tell them what you're going through and try, it's never going to be 100% accurate, but you can try to align your emotions with your speech and try to convey to others, conversate with others. And then they'd understand what's going on. Okay, maybe you're being grumpy and you're being just hot-headed because there's this going on in your internal system. And so definitely conveying that to other people, not only does it alleviate your suffering, but it brings you closer to other people, hey? So that in the future, you can also do the same for them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think it's just one of those things that you learn how to do as you're going, because it's hard to come into it and do that and open up and let people in. And it's so easy when you're bottling all it up to just snap at people. I know I definitely went through such a hard time that I wasn't doing well in my day-to-day life. I was late to work because I wasn't sleeping. You know, my mom would get on me about needing to do something and I would snap, even if it was unrelated. And it wasn't necessary to snap. You're just trying to help, you know? But once you start opening up and confronting how you're feeling about it, you start to understand that other people, regardless of if they had a close relationship, they feel their own way as well. And once you can start to see it from kind of that side and let them in so you can hear their side, you start to get back to your normal self and not snap at people the way it's so easy to do when you feel kind of helpless.
One of the biggest lessons I've learned was vulnerability actually connects us, right? For the longest time, I thought, being strong meant you didn't show any weakness. Being strong meant that you didn't show anyone a hint of your flaws, of your insecurities, of the demons inside. But I found that it's actually so freeing being able to let people in and let them understand because, hey, they're also going through the same things. Like we're all human. Nobody's perfect. And it's just having the death of a loved one definitely proliferates you to look within inside. Because if you don't, it's just going to be too heavy to which you won't be able to survive. You know, you're going to lose your job because you won't be able to show up with your best self, and you're going to be losing your sleep. You're going to suffer. Your grades are going to suffer, and the relationships that you have with people are going to degrade over time if you do not address this issue. And I've seen that, and so many people that I've talked to who do open up, and when they finally do open up, it's like this big kind of relief, and like now we can actually focus on other things instead of just like, they want to talk about it, right? I know the times where I didn't want to talk, I actually did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so with support systems, how important was your support system during your time of loss, and who or what were your main sources of support?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think a support system is really the only thing that can get you through something like that. I know it's so easy to kind of push them away at the time, but once you lean into them, they really are the ones who can like lift you back up a little bit. And I was really lucky at the time that I had a support system. I had a group of people around me who cared enough to be there and didn't just, run away when it got tough. Funny enough, the way it worked out, the night before I found out my dad passed away was my first date with my now girlfriend of almost 4 years. And I've never been one to believe in like fate or anything, but it was such not funny, but like such an interesting like timing kind of coincidence that it just seems like we came into each other's lives like right when we needed each other. And throwing someone into a situation like that, dealing with all of that with someone you've only had one date with, I think the easy response would be to just run away. Like that's a big burden to carry on to support someone through. But she stuck right there with me the whole time. She was like there when I needed to listen, when I was upset and needed to vent a little bit. If I had a really rough day dealing with all of it, she'd take me out somewhere to help me clear my head a little bit, ask questions about my dad to kind of get to know him. And even to this day, she still remembers his birthday every year and thinks about him on Father's Day. And she never even met him or anything. So she was really pivotal, and I can't explain enough how much she helped me through it, even though I don't think she realizes how much she did at the time. And I mentioned it before, but she always says like, it wasn't work. I wanted to be there. But that just shows the kind of person, right? That the person who wants to be there, and that's not work. And I was very, very lucky to have found that at exactly the time that I really, really needed it.
Dude, first of all, congratulations on 4 years.
Thank you.
This is just, and yeah, you had mentioned that, it's a first date, and you had told her that day about.
So our first date was Thursday night, and I found this out early Friday morning.
Oh.
And yeah, I didn't want her to think I was just like ghosting after the first date, but man, I wasn't feeling like talking to anybody. So I was just honest and let her know what happened. And she gave me the space, but she stayed close by and just kind of stuck around for it.
That's a beautiful story of how the truth can actually just help you. Now, if you hadn't told her the truth and just pushed her away and just dealt with it on your own, then you wouldn't have found out that she is this amazing person that is able to help you in this time of need. And now 4 years later, hey, and it's just, now you get to the inception of the relationship is definitely a testament to how strong the foundation is. Because then now, in those times of despair, you have someone on your side, and then you're able to do the same thing for her when her time of need comes. And it's just this support system is crucial. It's essential to a life, a balanced and fruitful life, because we're not going to get through life unscathed, man. I'm certainly, I used to be a believer of, I'm just going to tough it all out. And it's just, I'm not going to hurt. Like, I'm just going to go through it alone. But then you realize, just like you live long enough, you get to realize this life is horrific sometimes. And I've felt certain emotions that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And had I not had that, my father, my sister, and that close friend who was with me, who I could call and I could just be vulnerable around, I don't think I'd be here right now. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I used to think the same thing. Like anything that would get thrown my way, I'd take it on by myself. I'd get through it. I'd come out just fine. And I lived that way for so long. And I think that's a lot of the time there's the way you're raised. I know that's what my dad did. And it's tough. Like you can do that for a while and it works in some situations, but like inevitably you hit a time where that's just not the case, where you need someone or where something hits you hard enough that you just can't get back up on your own. And I would never wish it to be like that on someone because it's such a hard time. But the sad truth is it happens at some point, and it's so helpful to not push those people away. I was so lucky to have her there and the other people around me that if I did push her away at that time, I know I'd be in such a different place today. And I'm so grateful that that wasn't my reaction at the time.
You had mentioned that, yeah, there are times where you can just grit through the bad times. And well, that's helpful because in certain scenarios, but it's unsustainable in the long term.
Exactly.
Because you end up pushing people away as well, because when you get through it alone, it's like, what's the need for this relationship then? Like if all you're presenting them with is this person that's just upbeat and positive all the time, you're not really presenting yourself authentically. I find that the people that we don't really connect deeply, where we don't really talk about the bad stuff. It's all just funny. It's all just good. Like we don't really connect that way. You know what I mean? Like, but then the buddies that I do have, where sure we can have that time where it's all funny and we'll crack some jokes here and there. But at the same time, when I do need to have that, oh man, I'm feeling like absolutely miserable. This is not my day. And they know how to just deal with it. We don't need to go out and party. We don't need to go out and we don't need to do anything. We just sit there and talk. And that's like, bro, those are some of the most beautiful moments I've had where just another person, a friend, a family member just sits there with me and we just talk it out, cry it out. And
yeah, exactly. And it's okay to have friends that's not your relationship with. Like you need to have people to go out with. But it is really nice to find when something happens, the friends who will be there, who don't need to just go out and have fun, who can be there for the tough moments. Another big support for me was Cody from high school. We've been best friends since we were like 3-4 years old. And the moment that he found out what happened, he left work, dropped everything, and came and like lived in my house for like 2 weeks.
Ooh, that's awesome.
And I didn't ask him to, but he just did. He used his vacation time and just came and stayed there until he knew that I was cool and I could just be by myself and start working on it by myself. But that was so great as well, and so like warming to find like having a friend that could do that for you. And I was really lucky. He was there for everything. When it came time to clean up the house, he was there every single day. If I needed like help with some lawyer stuff, he would do what he could. And I never asked him to do that. And I have a whole group of friends, honestly, who did all those same things too. Never asked to do that though, but they were there regardless. They wouldn't have thought anything different. And going through something like this, one of the silver linings is for sure, it brings you closer with the people around you. And it shows you if you have people who are there for you like that. And it's a really good feeling to have them there. And I can't speak highly enough about those people who were there for that. It really makes a big difference in how you come out of the other end.
And you'll never forget this.
Exactly. Yeah.
The moments where you're in need and a friend just shows up. You don't even have to talk about the issue at hand. Like just their presence. Yeah, that's giving their time.
For those 2 weeks he lived there, we barely talked about what was going on. He was playing video games and doing anything could to keep my mind like off of it and keep me out, like okay just having someone around. And when it came to it, like we would talk about it, but it just being there to take your mind off of it, like getting a group to go out and do something so that you're not just spiraling, sitting alone in the house. You know what I mean? There's a lot of value in that, and it makes a huge difference in how you deal with the whole process.
That's beautiful, man. I think I keep hearing of more studies where people in general just have fewer friends, like compared to years ago. Like it's just more and more each year. Just people are just interacting less because of like social media, because of people just getting busier. But those friends, no matter how successful you get in life, no matter how many times you win and you surround yourself with accolades, the connections are all we've got.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Sometimes I forget because I get so focused on just studying and working out and all my achievements. I let it define me. But then I'm like, if I didn't have any of this, right, then am I still loved? Like, does the world love me for who I am or what I do? But then I remember my friends, the real ones, and then my family members, and I go, no, it's unconditional. Right?
Yeah.
It's just, and that's what really it just grounds me, and that's what empowers me and gets me through those awful days.
That's great. I think that's the mindset that you need to have. And like even just looking at a study like that, less friends isn't a bad thing necessarily. It just depends on what kind of friends they are.
Mm.
Like a small circle of friends who are there for you like that is a lot more valuable than a big group of friends who
Right.
won't be there for you when you need them like that. So yeah, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's definitely a shift from like an older generation to now. But if you have that mindset, like you said, it's really your value is based on like the relationships you build and what you do with people, not your accolades and everything like that. That's the right way. That's the right mindset to have, and that's how you build those relationships with people that will be there for you and that you'll be there for.
Yeah, I always ask myself this question: can I be unfiltered around this person? And if the answer is yes, then yeah, they're probably a real one. Can I?
Yeah,
Do I have to be on guard? Are they inconsistent? And there's all these things that just really bring you closer to other people. But then a lot of us are also really terrified of being alone. So we'll kind of put up with a lot of BS from other people. But Cody is a testament to a real friend. And
yeah, absolutely.
a lot of people don't have that though. It just, for the longest time, I didn't know what a friend was. I didn't
Yeah.
know what it was. I just thought, oh, we just party, we just have a good time. But then you hear stories like your girlfriend, like Cody, like the real ones, and you go, oh, that's what it means. But you don't really realize it until something really bad happens and the bad ones got weeded out.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. The sad truth that
Mhm.
you don't know who are the people like that in your life until something happens. But that's even though it's like a terrible situation, there's no good about a situation like that. That is one of the silver linings, is that it shows you those relationships and gives you a chance to grow those relationships as well.
Yeah. The bad times definitely prove who the real people are because they're willing to stick through it. I keep hearing
Exactly.
that another phrase of that, like a same kind of quote, like different quote, but the kind of same meaning as to when you hit rock bottom, those that stay, those are the people you hold close to your heart. But when you're at the top and then you get more friends as a result of that, maybe lots of them are real, maybe lots of them aren't real, but you get to really weed out the bad people and the people who only like you for your achievements when you hit those miserable points.
Yeah.
Are there any specific practices or routines that helped you maintain your mental and emotional well-being during times of loss?
There were a few, and yeah, I don't think they're universal. What works for everyone will be different. I know everyone responds differently, but two of the things that I think I mentioned were really important for that. Shifting my focus from the things that I regretted, the things that I wish I did differently, to trying to push those out and just remember that person by the good times, the things they did for you, the things they did with you. That was a big one. Once I was able to shift that, and me and my sister kind of sat down and talked about a lot of the good memories and stuff. That was a good one. It made you feel a lot closer to, it made us feel a lot closer to our dad at that time. It made I don't know, when you're thinking about the poor memories, you still kind of end up pushing them away because you're angry to some extent. It wasn't times that you were happy, but when you think about the good ones, it does make them feel kind of like, in a way, they're still there. So that was, I think, one of the biggest ones. And then opening up with the people around me was a big one too. As I managed to kind of do that, I started to express my emotions a little bit and just fall back on them, because I did realize at a point, I can't just do this by myself. I need to open up a little bit. And then aside from that, a big one was just giving myself the time to grieve. for a long time I was feeling like, it's been a month, it's been 2 months. I'm not feeling better. I'm still not sleeping well. I'm still angry. Like, why am I not getting better? And it got to a point where I kind of just realized that I don't need to be better by now. Like, it's such a tough situation. And, at 19, I was still a kid. I wasn't that mature yet or anything. So once I kind of had that realization, and just that there's no timestamp on when you need to be over it by, you just have to control what you can control. I started to pull myself out of it a little bit. When I felt myself spiraling, I'd remind myself, this is time. It'll get better. It slowly is getting better. And I just need to be patient with myself and with those around me. And just was able to kind of validate my emotions then, but also realize that I have to control them as well. I can't take them out on the people around me. They're hurting as well. And once I kind of started to give myself that time to lean into other people and to just shift my mindset, I did feel like I started to pull myself out of it quite a bit.
Dude, that, if everybody internalized that, where you accept the good and the bad and you're able to ride through the bad without making it worse, because a lot of people will experience that negative feeling, that visceral feeling of, oh, I'm not enough, the insecurities, the loss, the powerful negativity, and they just try to mask it with drugs, alcohol, blowing up at other people, putting other people down, and it just intensifies it and worsens it. But for me, I relate to that, because I certainly, my feelings, I used to not be able to make sense of them, because I'd be, when I was 9, I was separated from my mom in the Philippines, came to Canada, didn't see her for 10 years. And
wow.
it was just like, I grappled with this stuff, and I just kind of played video games, numbed it out by junk food. And just, I was young, I didn't really know what that, catharsis and sharing with other people or accepting it. When you say, for somebody who hasn't really been through it, have experienced that loss, or being able to grapple with emotions, or traveling through that spiritual route, if you know what I mean, they don't really know what it means to actually relieve themselves of the pain by accepting the bad. You know what I mean? Because when I experience bad now, like today, I just had like 30 minutes of, I didn't feel enough. I didn't feel good enough of this podcast, of being me, and I didn't feel like I was worthy. But then going, this will pass. This too shall pass. And then an hour later, I was better. It's like exactly. Laughing around, talking to my coworkers. But we have those bouts, whether it be for days and whether it be for, a couple hours. And it's just being able to decipher what caused that is certainly an immense lesson I've learned.
It is. It shifts kind of everything for you, because it applies to everything. Yeah. And I think something to keep in mind, though, like if someone's going through a situation like that, is it doesn't just happen overnight. Like you have like an kind of aha moment and realize what you need to change, but it doesn't just change overnight. Like, it's been almost 4 years now, and I'm still working on it. I still have to remind myself of that it takes time, but you just do what you can every time it happens. Try to remember that mindset, try to implement it more and more, and apply it to everything you can. And over time you get there. And like you say, you still have those like little moments where you're not doing okay. I think I have one fairly regularly, but it's about remembering that and applying that, so how you can pull yourself out of them. And if you do that, you can get through those moments.
It's that constant push and pull. Right? Yeah. Okay, I'm doing fantastic today, but you can't just pretend like you don't have any problems, because you do, but you can revel in it. You can
enjoy the moment, right?
Yeah. Or even the bad. Like, you can, instead of running away from the pain, you welcome it. You go, this shall pass. And that's just the human experience, man. That just, we're constantly in that loop of, okay, we like the good, we run towards pleasure, run away from pain, but they're just both a part of life. And to accept that and to welcome them into our lives is so much growth. And then you had mentioned that aha moment, and then there's like all these different tools that we can apply to our lives, whether that be, just some like vulnerability, talking to someone, making sure you take your mind off of things. So video games,
Yeah.
work, studying, and there's all these things going at you, and you need to be able to weed out the good and the bad. And you had said it's different for every single person, because maybe for you, maybe recognizing those emotions, maybe that's just not effective. Maybe going out and talking to people is way more effective than honing in on that feeling. And for me personally, for the people that I've talked to, definitely recognizing that and accepting that is like a majority of people it works. But I know some people where it's just, that's not their thing. They don't feel better by that. It just makes them worse.
100%. That's just why you need to be patient when someone's going through that, because they're also probably figuring it out when what works for them. Like, it doesn't have to be a loss. It can just be anything that they're going through. People deal with it differently. And the first time that something like that hits you, you don't know how to deal with it. You hear all the things that people tell you to do, but that only has so much value to you. It's helpful to hear these things and get this advice, but just because it worked for them doesn't mean it'll work for you. So it just takes time. You have to work through it, try things, figure out what works. And it just, like I think you said earlier, it's never totally okay, but it gets better.
You just learn to be stronger and surround yourself with people that want the best for you and you want the best for them, and find tools that are helpful and not destructive. Because there's certainly people experience a loss or some sort of catastrophe, and there's two routes. Either you make it better or you make it worse.
Yeah.
And certainly I've been travelers of both directions.
As have I,
Yeah. Where it's, it's bad for you. It's destructive, but it just feels so good in the short term. And then the ones that do alleviate the suffering, they're usually the ones that are long-term fulfilling. And they're the ones that are having those tough talks. They're the ones that do require an immense amount of effort.
Yeah. And yeah, it just depends. Like you say, like you find your toolkit of what practices work for you. And like you asked about what worked for me, one of the big ones was just finding stuff to work towards, setting goals. For a while after that happened, I felt so helpless. So you kind of just have to shift to, well, what can I control, right? You can control how you handle your emotions, how you choose to relate to other people. You shut them out because they don't understand, or you let them in and let it be a time that gets closer to you. But you can also just control where you're headed. And for me, when I got to a point where I felt like I needed to do something and I started setting goals for myself, it really helped me pull out of it quite a bit. Like, my dad had always wanted me to go to university. And that's one of the things we were fighting about, is I didn't know what I wanted to do. So one of the goals I set for myself was, okay, next year I'm going in, and I enrolled in MacEwan and went all in on it. But it doesn't have to be a big one either. Like, I goaled myself to do 100 push-ups a day for the year, and I did that. It doesn't really matter what the goal is, as long as it feels worthwhile to you. And just the sense of dedication of starting something, of getting in a routine of it and changing your everyday practices, giving yourself something that you feel like you're working on. And then the sense of like accomplishment is so huge for helping my mental health at the time. And yeah, it just gives you something to focus on, work out of it. And even if it just works as a distraction for a couple hours of the day, that can help too. But finding the goals that are meaningful to you, things you wanted to work toward, big or small, it was a huge strategy I used to help propel myself out of it. And it really changed the direction I was going in and got me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's a great segue into the next topic, which is success in university. And man, kudos to you for using the pain that you have in you to be able to apply it, take that energy and apply it to be a student and just go all in. Because just doing the 100 push-ups per day too is just, when you find that a cause greater than yourself, because we get so caught up in our minds of just, this happened to me and I've been in a victim mentality, and focusing on what you can't control. Why did this happen to me? Other people's dads didn't pass away. Why am I feeling this way? And then you realize that there's nothing you can do. Like, there's just, sure, you can like go in that dive into that mental soup of, okay, this happened and there's nothing I can do about it. Or you can go, I can work on my body. I can work on my mind. I can work on providing myself with tools to alleviate the suffering, to better myself as a person. To, if my dad were around, what would he want me to do?
Exactly. Like, you can only control what you can control. Like you say, like, it's easy to fall into the, like, my dad's gone, no one else's is. Like, that's not true, but you can fall into that and just leave it as an excuse. And that's what I did for a long time, is I was like, well, this happened to me, it shouldn't have, it's not fair. And I didn't really do anything with it. But you hit the point of using it to motivate you to get on to bigger and better things. And it really did. Like, I wish that was something that never happened, but it definitely guided me to where I am today. And I'm happy with the direction that I chose after that, just because I feel like it's something that I just work towards something. Well, what would he have been proud of if he were there to see it, and work towards that?
Try to as close as possible. Yeah.
There we go.
And yeah, dude, thank you for sharing that story. I know a lot of people have experienced and will experience loss. I know I'm going to, but bro, I'm terrified, man, because
it's scary. Yeah.
Like, I get so attached to the people in my life, and just I don't want to see them go away.
It's sad. It sucks that it's one of those things that's kind of out of your control. Yeah. But I think if I learn one thing from all of that, is just that once that's to happen, you can't control anything. But while they're here, you can. So just, you don't always have to be right. Like I know you said earlier, just, you have to come to common ground. Just try not to stay angry for too long. If you wanted to say something, say it. Well, you can. And that's what I always try to do now, because that's really all you can do, right?
But kudos to you for not letting that take you over. And then you have had extreme success, it seems like, in university.
I don't know about that, but thank you.
Top of your class, was that around the time when it was happening? Before MacEwan?
So I don't know. In high school, I never got very good grades. So it was kind of a surprise to me to do well, because in high school, I was always like a low 70s kind of student, which was fine. But that's just kind of where I hovered. But like I said, after that all happened, it propelled me. That was one of the things my dad wanted me to do. So I went into university and I just went all in on it. And I worked on a diploma at the same time I was doing my degree. And I graduated that diploma last year. And I got just like a nice little medal. And
congratulations.
For graduating at the top of the class for it. And that was just a moment that, I don't know, I don't usually like revel in those things. It's just, it was one of those things that I did that because I knew it was something that my dad wanted me to do. And it felt like a moment that he would have been proud of had he been there. So it was an emotional like thing to get. Like, it's never something that I thought I could accomplish. And it felt huge at the moment, even if it's just something written on a piece of paper. It felt huge in the moment.
Sure, he's extremely proud of you, bro. Like, the work ethic to be able to be at the top of your class. That's just something that a lot of people strive towards, but then the work ethic is a different beast. And there's this quote by James Clear. It's, we do not rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. Like during a test, everyone's trying to get 100%. During a race, everybody's trying to finish first. But not everyone gets top of your class. Not everyone finishes a marathon, a race first. Not everybody gets number one athlete. You fall to the habits and like the dedication and the routine, and the times where you're fully tested are the days where, I don't want to study. And like being in that, I can't imagine just being in that tension where, that you're still trying to cope, and also having responsibility when it comes to your studies, also having all your relationships checking in on you, signing this, signing that, house this, who's this going to go to, making sure this friend's okay, making sure you're communicating properly, getting good sleep. It's like there's all these things. But yeah, kudos to you, man.
Thank you.
So what study techniques and habits have you found most effective in your journey through university?
That's a tough one, because I know there's a lot out there, and everyone you talk to will tell you different things. Yeah. But I think to me, the most true answer is also one of the most obvious, which is just taking like really thorough notes. And I don't think it matters how you do it. Like some people say it's better for your memorization if you do it by hand. I like to do it on my computer. I don't think that matters so much as what you do with like all of that after. I think it's valuable for like memorization, writing things down and rereading it. But what I try to do is just write down everything I can during class. And then afterwards, I take some time and I try to just make sense of it all, go through and like understand how everything that you wrote down works and how it connects to everything else as like a system as a whole that you looked at. Because gaining the understanding of how it all works helps your recall of the information far better than just taking notes and repetitively reading them. I'm sure there's times where that's the most valuable if it's just a memorization kind of thing. I've had exams like that. But when you really need to understand something or go above and beyond kind of what was just taught in class, taking the time to really sit down and understand what you wrote down just goes way farther because you can make those connections.
Mm-hmm. You can read that, oh, H2O is that of water, but then you can also visualize water. You can see how water meets your life. You could see the purpose to it and what it does to the different systems. You could look at what the body is made up of, what percentage of water, and you have all these things that connect to each other. And that's like, whether that be math, whether that be in business, whether that be in the stock market or working out. Like I've definitely been guilty of just memorizing flashcards and it never sticks. But if I'm able to, even memorizing for the intros for this and memorizing kind of people's stories in the podcast, this is a form of studying for me too. And
for sure.
I need to be able to back my own kind of story and be able to memorize the people and their stories. And just, adding a story makes it really easy to be able to, okay, how does this relate to my life?
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you understand it, instead of just memorizing the words, you can apply it to everything. If they ask you a question you haven't seen before, but like you really understand it, you can make those kind of leaps to see how this would affect this. Whereas if you just memorize the words that you wrote down, which I've been guilty of before too, something like that will stump you because you don't know how it's going to affect that. So that's one of the biggest things that when I started doing that, I started noticing a lot less stress during exams, and it definitely helped and honestly reduced the workload of studying instead of just reading over and over again, just doing one good one and understanding everything. It takes less time for me, but it made a big difference.
Yeah. And you're also just able to retain it better because it's not just, sure, a lot of people say that, oh, university, just college, it's just about test taking. But I like to memorize what I learn and apply it beyond the test. Because I think that some of them are kind of useful, man. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How do you maintain a balance between your academic responsibilities and your personal life?
That's a tough thing to do. I think that's one of the harder aspects of university as a whole is balancing that. And I know when I started, I kind of just dove into it, went all in, and just thought like that's just kind of what it takes then. But you hit a point where you realize that everything else keeps going, even when you're in school. You have to foster those relationships. You have to take time for yourself, make sure you're getting a good sleep, just do everything like that. And what I found worked for me is just making sure I prioritize what I need to prioritize, and I make a schedule and a plan for every week if I can, just breaking down what I need to do every week. These are the things I want to accomplish. If I have more time, I'll get to these. And then breaking it down by day and putting in time slots for what I'm going to do from 1 to 2 on this day. I know when my classes are, so I give myself the time to do that. And then add on a little bit of extra time, so hopefully you finish earlier. But if you get delayed, then you have the extra time there. And I find just planning ahead, it allows you to do that. It allows you to find time to see people if you need to do that. If you're trying to get to the gym, it shows you when you can actually do that. Because if you come into it without having any kind of plan of what you're going to do that week, you feel so busy that you don't get to anything outside of the very first things that you try to do.
Yeah. Structure provides so much relief and so much more stability when you create a plan as to, okay, I'm going to allot this time for studying, I'm going to allot this time for relationships, you don't have to sacrifice much. Like certainly you do. There's that opportunity cost. I
Sure.
talked my intro econ class.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity cost to everything that we do. There, you study. You could be using that time to do literally anything. You
Mhm.
could be using that for the relationships. You could be using that time to study. But it's just, what are you trying to strive towards, right? And I'm a firm believer of values. Like
Exactly. And I just find it helps a ton to when you write out everything you have to do that week, prioritize it. Is seeing someone the most important thing to do that week? If so, great, put that in first and then plan everything
Mhm.
else around that. If you have an exam that week, maybe that takes the top spot that week, but you just start with what you need to do and kind of work out from there. And as far as study tips go, I think that's a big one as well. During like finals, it's so easy to feel so overwhelmed because you have to study for so many exams. Sometimes you have them on back-to-back days, but coming into them with a plan, knowing what you need to get through and planning it out each day really, really helps you alleviate the stress a little bit, but also ensure that you are going to get everything done because you know what you need to do. And it allows you to hold yourself kind of accountable as well. If you fall behind, you know what you need to do to make up for it. And it's also really rewarding because if you finish something early, it kind of finds you some time in the day that you didn't think you were going to have. So you can go home early or you can spend more time on something you don't feel good about. So that I found that very helpful for both balancing things outside of school, but also honing in on the things I need to study and work on during school.
Yeah, there's a big relief when you get everything done. Hey, now you can actually, it's not that you didn't want to do it, but it's just you're able to focus more on other things like relationships when you don't
Yeah.
have that lingering feeling. Like I've had those feelings of like when you procrastinate something and you do end up going to that event and it's just lingering. You're not able to be fully in the moment.
It is like I didn't do that my first year. I just
Yeah.
went into every week and I was like, I'll figure it out. And anytime that I wasn't working on school, if me and my girlfriend went out, if I took some time to just relax, I couldn't do it because I was just sitting there thinking, oh my God, what am I not doing right now that I should be doing? And just the feeling of, well, if I'm not doing it now, I'm going to have to do it later. And it doesn't let you relax at all. At least it
Yeah.
didn't let me relax at all. So just having that structured plan, nothing can ever catch you off guard if you
Yeah.
plan that out. And it was super, super valuable. And it made it a lot easier for me to go into every week as well.
Beauty. And you had mentioned that, okay, what's most important to you, whether it be that test, and you'd study towards that test, and maybe you wouldn't see the girlfriend or that friend, but the people who get it, who actually want you to do well, would understand. Because I've also been in a position where I'd be a little bit salty when people don't say yes to certain events. And now that being busy and having all these responsibilities, now I get it why people had said no in the past, where it's okay, you can love from afar, you can support them by being understanding.
Exactly. And yeah, that's just the way it goes. There's sometimes that you're going to get busy, and inevitably, especially in school, there's going to be times where the priority is school, like during finals week, during like the last little bit of the semester. And it just comes out into how you communicate with those people, I think. Then just letting them know like, hey, I have all of this going on and I am stressed about it. So it's going to be a busy week. I want to see you, but I just need like to get through this week. And if you do that rather than just not telling them why you're distant, they will go above and beyond to support you in it often, but at the very least they'll understand why and they won't hold it against you. So inevitably when you do get too busy for it, you just have to be open about it and not just close everyone else out, I think.
Yeah. Communication is powerful, man. It solves so many problems, because I find like I have some certain family members that they don't say what they feel, and they don't tell us what is going on.
Mhm.
So we're kind of just having to play this guessing game of, oh, that could have been this, it could have been that, oh, this is this, what's this facial expression. But then when you tell someone, oh, give me a little bit of slack, I'm really stressed for this exam, or this thing is going on that I'm really upset about, then people will just give you more patience. And that's
Yeah,
just,
exactly.
it takes 10 seconds. Maybe it's a bit uncomfortable because you're you're telling people something that's vulnerable, going back to that again, but it would solve a lot of problems, I'd say.
For sure.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to new students entering university to ensure they have a successful academic experience?
That one, I think the biggest thing that I would tell someone is something that I hadn't really thought about until pretty recently. But when you're coming in and looking to be successful in it, I think the first thing you need to do is define what the success in it will be to you. And because I think it's easy, you come in and the obvious answer is that academic success is just getting good grades. But I think there's two definitions to it. One, of course, being getting good grades, but also the value that you take away with you after you're done what you're doing. And I think the assumption is that those go together. If you get the good grades, you take away the value of the degree. But I don't think that that's true. I think that they are kind of separate. A university offers so many different experiences. Once you paid your tuition, like everything else that they offer is pretty much free. Like there's clubs to join, there's committees that you can get on to get some experience and build your resume. They're always hosting like talks and bringing people in to do speeches and stuff about all kinds of different topics. There's so many different like classes you can take for your electives. And I think that those things are where you find the value in it. And of course, not every single one you go to, if you go to a bunch of them, is going to be valuable. I know me and my buddy have gone to a bunch, and there's been some that we left being like, what a waste of time. We went to this like business etiquette dinner where we spent an hour and a half just getting like grilled about not holding a fork right. So that wasn't worth it. But there are other ones that are so like surprisingly valuable. And you don't know until you go. I think that the people who come out of university that got the most value out of their tuition money and their time spent and just out of their degree in general aren't just the ones who got the best grades, but the ones who kind of immersed themselves in anything that they could, that you put yourself out of your comfort zone. Like I'm an accounting student. I'm on the data analytics club, but I've taken a couple psych classes. I've taken sociology. I just took a sustainability class. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't take all of those again, some of them, but there were some that were so surprisingly valuable, even though they had absolutely nothing to do with what I'm studying, that you can kind of bridge the gap to what you learn and apply it to your everyday life and just gain knowledge in areas you didn't have it. It's so easy to just pick the classes that you have to take based on the things that you're already familiar with, because it'll probably be the easiest. But there's not really that much value in it if you're already familiar with it, whereas you can just try something that you're unfamiliar with, and maybe it ends up not being the best class for you. But if you do a couple of them, you're going to find some that will be. And some of the most valuable lessons I've learned in university came from classes that I didn't have to take or that I just didn't want to take, like English even. And yeah, I just think the biggest thing is to define what the success you want to find is and immerse yourself in everything. Don't just focus on the grades.
Yeah, bro, that's a very insightful response, and kudos to you for leveraging the tuition in it. When you have a university experience like that, where you actually go to the clubs, when you don't just bus home as soon as your last class ends. I know a lot of people like that, bro. They just go back to Sherwood Park after their last class is done. They don't really talk to anyone. They don't make friends on campus. They don't join any clubs. But part of the university experience is being able to talk to the different people in your classes, being able to take those classes that you are unfamiliar with, being able to join the clubs. And there seems to be this kind of talk these days that I keep hearing often. Oh, this degree, especially in business and psych, and I'm in psych here in business, and oh, it's not helpful. You're not gonna. I know so many people that don't have jobs when they're even though they have their degree. Yeah, because they didn't talk to enough people, bro. This
Exactly.
is like campus is such a networking ground, bro. Like this is where you just have an excuse to talk to as many people every single day as you can and meet all these. The people that are there are also paying a tuition, maybe by their parents, maybe by them, but it's expensive. And a lot of us, we're not going to waste that. So we actually are going to do something with that degree. We're actually going to pass. Versus in high school, like you get a mix of kids that won't do so well in life and this and that. But one of these people that you'll meet, they're gonna be the CEOs, they're gonna be the nurses, the doctors, the pharmacists.
Yeah.
And having access to that just opens you up to a whole new world.
For sure. And I mean, I get going home right after class. Like I want to every day to go right home after class. I don't always want to stay, but if you look for it, there's so many things that are going on. And that's the great thing about university is that like once you paid your tuition, there's essentially unlimited things you can learn and an infinite like, experiences you can go into. You just have to do it. And that's where you really take the value from it. And the person that does get themselves outside of their comfort zone and do that is going to come away with the same piece of paper at the end of it, but that'll have a lot more intrinsic value than if you just focus on the classes, even if you did really well in the classes.
And that's a healthy habit, a healthy routine. Speaking of like getting into healthier routines, but with the realism into that, how did you develop healthier routines while balancing the demands of university life?
It was a tough thing to do. Like I said, I kind of, when I started, I just dove right into school and that was my main focus. But you kind of hit a point where you realize that, like I said, life still goes on. You still have to prioritize other things. And I know partway through my first semester, I was realizing like I haven't been to the gym in months. I'm packing whatever I can for lunch, almost always like pretty unhealthy because I'm tired when I get home and it's late. So I just kind of had to have a moment of, am I happy with where that's going and how I'm doing with that? And I wasn't. So I just figured, well, what can I do to start? I had enough time, I figured, to go to the gym a couple days a week. So I did that, focus on what I was comfortable with, which was like a lot of cardio at first. Started just being generally more conscious about what I was eating. But then it kind of snowballs and you find what works and you figure out how you can adjust things to incorporate those. I ended up adjusting my sleep schedule quite a bit so I can go to the gym 4 or 5 days a week in the mornings before class instead of in the evenings. And I found it opened up a lot more time. And we started finding recipes for like what you can eat healthier and meal prepping all at the beginning of the week and making that ahead of time so that you're not feeling like you don't have the energy to make lunch because it's already there. And you really just start feeling a lot better as you do that, which then makes you kind of seek out more and more of those things to build off of. But it's really just about starting where you can, where you're comfortable, and just listening to people and seeing what works for you.
Bro, that snowball effect is so phenomenal. A lot of people that live an unhealthy lifestyle don't know what actual freedom is like. And what you talked about where, okay, you were unhappy with the physical side of things. Like maybe academically you were doing all right. Just you didn't have enough energy at the end of the day. You just packed yourself a lunch that was unhealthy, but then you implemented a different thing. Maybe you started having a healthy lunch and okay, that's the upgrade. You feel better. You have more energy and start going to the gym, hit a routine. At the start, you're just hitting cardio. Okay, I'm just hitting cardio. I feel better. I might as well hit some weights, cardio. And it's just a stack effect. And now and on top of that, you just have more energy to put back into school. And it's this like feedback loop of positivity, of discipline, of mindset. And yeah, bro, you're looking huge, man. Like,
Thank you.
Kudos. I see the hard work, and I've been pumping for almost 8-9 years now. And I just, when somebody explains kind of their workout routines to me and the kind of the change that they've implemented into their life, I'm like, man, that's so relatable.
It is. A lot of people go through the same kind of process, and it's tough to get into it when you don't know what you're doing. But just like I said, you just start where you're comfortable, lift some weights, find out what works, and you slowly figure it out kind of as you go. And as you figure it out, you find it more and more attainable to incorporate it into your kind of everyday routine. I think that was a big reason of why I was able to. It just slowly I was able to do more and more. And even though my responsibility stayed the same, as you figure it out, it gets easier and it gets more fun, and you start seeing results, which makes you feel good about yourself, which gives you more energy to put back in. It is a feedback loop, totally, like you said. And it just kind of snowballs from there. and it takes time, but it's worth the effort for sure. And you
Yeah.
feel better about yourself at the end of the day.
And that requires consistency, right? And what strategies do you use to maintain consistency in your routines, especially during stressful periods like exams?
Like I said before, planning ahead is always a big one. It's tough to be consistent when, during a semester, you don't know, not every week is the same. You have the same class times, but the workload every week is different. But I find keeping a routine, planning it out at the start of the week so that you know when you're going to be there helps you keep it up. I don't just plan out like schoolwork when I make that schedule, but put in like, I know this is the time I can go to the gym. This is the time I'm going to meal prep. Those are all important things that you have to prioritize on there. And having that plan in there helps you keep it consistent, because I don't know, if you don't and you kind of just try and find time as you go throughout the week, you always find yourself too busy. And even before I was in school, I don't know how I was too busy then. Wasn't doing anything, but I was still too busy to get to the gym, too busy to make a good lunch or something. But planning it out, it just makes it so much more attainable and feel like it takes up less time. So that would be one of the biggest ones, I think, is just making sure you go into each week with a plan. And honestly, during the busy times like finals, funny enough, I almost find it kind of easier. And even though like you may be more busy, but keeping that routine, it gives you a sense of normalcy during a period of time where you're stressed about things that you aren't normally stressed about. So even if it just works as something that keep your kind of schedule somewhat regular, or even just as a distraction from the things you're stressed about, even if it's just, an hour workout, I find a lot of value in that. And getting that break, I find, makes it almost easier to keep up with it. It might be all in my head, but I think it's the right mindset to do it that way, to keep that kind of consistency when you do feel like you get really, really busy.
Yeah. Consistency in all things is how you get anything done, because as soon as if you give up, like during exams, if you just stop that workout routine, then when things get hard, what are you telling yourself? Like, what are you telling your mind, body, and just like who you are? Are you able to trust yourself in those times? But no, you still implement the workout. You still do whatever. And it's not just working out. Hey, there's like meditation, there's like reading, there's like spiritual practices. There's all these things that you don't get graded on, but they're essential for how you're going to be mentally.
Exactly. And I think during those busy times, a big part of it too is remembering why you're there. Like just finding what motivates you. And I think that kind of ties into everything, like even coming back to recommendations for new students, and anything that you decide to take on, figure out what motivates you. And that's something that I didn't do for a long time, but a little while ago, I was talking to someone from school that we were working on a project together, and we just kind of get to talking about life. And he asked me, well, why do you work so hard to succeed in it? Why does it matter to you? Like, why does it matter if you get an A+ to a B-? And it seems like such an obvious question. Like, why? It was because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what the goal is. But I started thinking about it, and it wasn't an obvious answer to me. I spent the better part of a week thinking about, well, why does getting good grades matter? Then why does keeping these routines matter? And the first thing that I thought about was probably the worst answer, which was seeking approval from others. Like, if I get good grades, people think I'm smart. If I don't, they won't. If I get in good shape, that looks good to others. But breaking it down in a more meaningful way than that is really, really valuable. Like when it comes to school anyways, I really thought about it, and I was like, well, I see my girlfriend working so hard. She's a nurse. She's going out there and helping people, and she gives her all to everything she does, to really working to build something for us. And I want to do the same thing. I want to be as successful as I can so that we can build something together. And then I think about my dad, and he always told me this thing when I was a kid that used to drive me crazy. He always told me, anytime you do anything, do it to the best of your ability, or just don't do it. And it was one of those things that when I was a kid, I thought it was so, like, he's telling me when I'm mowing the lawn, and I'm like, sometimes things just need to get done. It doesn't matter how well you do them. But it's funny when you lose someone, all those things that used to annoy you, or they used to say that you didn't think mattered, you really think about and find the value in. And once I started to identify, okay, those are what motivate me to do well, it's what helps you keep consistent and power through it when it get busy. Like when I hit a wall in school and I feel like I can't do anymore, I think about what I'm trying to build with my girlfriend. I think about my dad yelling that at me, and it pushes you through it. Or when you wake up at 6 a.m. to your alarm going off because you're supposed to go to the gym and you just don't want to go, I think about that. Like, why did I set that alarm? What was motivating me to do that to begin with? And it gets you out of bed in the morning. So when it comes to school or just keeping consistency with those healthy routines, I think the biggest thing to do is figure out what's your motivation? Why are you doing it? And if you can identify that, it gives you what you need to get there during the times where you feel too busy to get there. But it's a harder question to answer than you think it will be. I thought it would be such an easy thing, but that was months ago, and I'm still thinking about it.
Dude, that's spectacular. Is this have you ever heard of like the 7 whys? Like the more you go deeper,
No.
I forget what the accurate idea was or name for it, but the more you go to school. Why do you go to school? Maybe it's superficial, like to get money, to get prestige. Maybe why do you want to study more, but to get good grades? But then you go, okay, why do you want to get good grades? Okay, so other people like you more. Why do you want other people to like you more? Because that'll put you at a higher value. Why do you want to be a higher value? Because your dad has taught you that being around people, and you dig deeper and deeper. Why do you want your dad's approval? Because I love him. Why do you, or all this? But eventually it's all these different whys. And then when it gets really deep, when you're struggling to find your purpose, why should you keep going? It's good to go back during those, reflect the foundation of it all, and really find the root of everything, and realize that, oh, this is why I do it. And you're able to be propelled to do such insurmountable feats of strength and tasks. But
yeah, that's really interesting. And yeah, I think you can always break it down more, even when it seems like an obvious answer why you're doing something. Like I thought it'd be so easy to answer, why do I care about my grades? But I thought about that for weeks. Like I couldn't just think of an answer. Like shout out Evan, I'm sure he's listening, hopefully. But I thought about that for a long time.
Yeah, Evan, do I know him? The guy? No, okay,
different guy. But yeah, it's funny. Sometimes you hear one of those things that it catches you off guard, and you think about it for so long. And if I could give advice about school, about keeping consistency, that's the biggest one, is just finding what that is, because thinking about it is what gets you to do it when you really don't want to.
Find your why.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you share some practical tips for integrating healthier habits into a busy schedule?
Yeah. At the risk of sounding redundant, planning ahead is a big one. I think when you're busy, like I said before, if you don't plan out when you're going to do something, you won't do it. You don't find time there. But making that schedule and planning ahead, figuring out when you're going to do something, it creates some accountability for you to get there. So that's a really big one. But also when you first set out to do something, really defining what's your goal. I think, especially when you have limited time, knowing what it is that you're working towards really helps you find where you need to start and how you're going to get there, because you don't have time to just, if it's the gym, like just go there and kind of figure it out while you're there. You need to have goals when you go in, and defining what you want to do really helps you find a place to start, and giving yourself that vision of where you want to be, 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road, is another good piece of motivation to get you there. And you can't really do that if you don't define what it is you're working toward. But then at the same time, being realistic with your capacities and just where you think you can get in a reasonable amount of time. Like if you dive into something right away and try to change your diet overnight and hit a heavy gym routine right away when you're doing all of these other things, school, work, anything, you just won't be able to sustain it. That's what I tried to do first. And you kind of inevitably crash and burn when that's the case. And even if you don't end up seeing the results that you're hoping for by just jumping into it, because that's not realistic, and it demotivates you and kind of pushes you back away from it. So just be realistic with where you're starting and what you can like conceivably attain and take on while you're doing all of these other things, because that allows you to stay motivated and actually see the results that you expect, compared to if you're just unrealistic with it, you won't ever see that.
Yeah. You need to be able to divorce your expectations and reality, because sometimes your expectations may exceed what you're capable of, and you need to be able to truly reflect on your capabilities. Like if you're just not that strong to begin with and you're thinking of a 225 bench within 3 months, you're going to be climbing a very steep mountain and you're going to set yourself up for failure. But if you go into it with like aligned expectations with your capabilities, and to be realistic about it and not set yourself up for failure, because I've definitely witnessed a lot of people that beat themselves up even though they've achieved a tremendous amount, because they had set the bar so high that it's just unattainable. And I know a lot of people also say that, oh, you got to set it 10 times higher, because if you do try to reach for it, then it's still going to be beyond other people's expectations. Depends what type of person you are too.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the kind of person. I'm not saying don't set goals and don't reach for things. I think that's really valuable, is to set things to strive for. Like you need that motivation. But if you go too far ahead of what you can actually do, it kind of works against you and just demotivates you when you don't get there, because you kind of set yourself up for failure, like you said, a little bit. So being like aggressive in what you want, like knowing what you want to get there and setting like a kind of somewhat aggressive goals, but keeping them realistic to something that is actually possible to attain, so that you can keep working towards it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of pattern to it. Hey, like if you're the type of person that's able to stick through a routine, if you're a person that just generally enjoys physical activity, or your mental capacity to sit down there for 5 hours in a row, then sure, maybe that is realistic and that is something that you can do. But if you're jumping into it and every single time in the past you've tried to start something, it just ultimately blows up in your face and you're just presented with failure. And is it Einstein that said repeating the same thing and expecting different results is the definition of insanity? Right? Like I've definitely been that person. It's like you're looking for something and you just check in the same spot over and over, or you do something and you do it and you're expecting the same result. Of course, it's gonna be the same. Like you gotta try something different. Like if this working out, weightlifting wasn't for you, maybe try pickleball, maybe try running. If this diet's not working for you, maybe try carnivore, try vegan. It's just, there's all these things.
Yeah, there's all those things to try. Just like, what can you realistically do, and how can you work to get there? And just trying everything and getting into a routine. There's a lot of value in that, and it feels really good once you find something that does work. It just takes some time to figure out what that is. And unfortunately, if you are a really busy person, it can be tough to figure that out. So yeah, just define what you want to do and set aggressive goals, but be realistic in your capacities as well, because at the end of the day, you're only a person and you can only do so much at once.
True. It's never going to be perfect. You're going to go through mistakes. And yeah, thank you, bro, for coming on the long-term podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Are there any last words for listeners and viewers who may be going through a loss right now? Any words?
I think just be mindful of your emotions at that time and remember they're valid, but just keep in mind the people around you as well. There's people who are there for you. And even if you don't feel like you have someone to talk to, you can send me a message. I'm always happy to talk to someone. I've had a few people who are going through something similar do that, but just find someone to talk to and open up about it and give yourself the time that you need to get through it. And like, it'll always hurt, but as Evan said, like, you build the strength and you get through it. So just keep doing it and use it as something to build something better for yourself. Set some goals. And like I said, find your motivation, and something like that is something that can use for really good motivation to make whoever that person was proud.
Brian Gulbraa, everyone. Did I pronounce that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and as always, to everyone listening and watching, there is a place for you in this chaotic world. Never lose hope, strengthen your faith, and keep it long term. Peace. Beautiful,
All
man.
right.
Beauty.
Thank you, man.